Our session is called Teaching Without a Classroom, and I'd like to introduce our Lockie McKinnon, because he's certainly the brains behind the operation here, and a wealth of experience, P to 12. Certainly worked with Lockie, have seen his work in both a learning center and mainstream classroom, huge passion for inclusion and UDL and differentiate instruction. You know, and I think it's really inspiring. He sees the world through a different lens, certainly as an educator with an LD. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for Lockie. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. And yeah, we're so lucky to be able to work together.
Well, I'm going to introduce Carla because she is presenting with me. And at the beginning of COVID, we spent a lot of time talking back and forth, trying to figure things out. And Carla is one of the people who gets phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. When the students don't call their parents, they call her. She's a passionate vice principal of a large school in South Colchester and UDL, and she's worked really hard in developing alternative programs in small schools, which are a real challenge. And I asked her to do the presentation with me because we have different perspectives from high school and from elementary. I worked in middle school this year, but elementary would only look so different depending on who it is that we're working with. And I'm going to say this right up front so that you hear it, because this is the key to everything that we do here. Perfection is the enemy of good. This is a good presentation. It's not a perfect presentation. We had 10 minutes to go in here. It looks different when you present to your class than when we're presenting to all of you. And so we've done some things, but we're going to fumble. And for example, right now you can see that I'm using the closed captioning. Well, Carla can't because Carla's not, hers not, are not going to show up. So that's not perfect. So if there's somebody here in the room, every time Carla talks to present, you're not going to see closed captioning. And we're trying to set up our rooms as best we can for the people who are in them. So when we're designing UDL, I want to make this as open and as accessible to as many people as I can. That's my upfront job, right? However, if I don't have anybody with a visual impairment and they can't, all of this room would have to be described in this image if someone's on here with a visual impairment because they're not seeing anything. They might be able to get access with their screen reader to the topic heading, but everything else would not be accessible. And we're not perfectly accessible all the time. We're getting there. It's a process of getting there. Okay. Just like turning the pages on this screen, a process of getting there. Okay, what is UDL? Can you guys tell us grade level and how much you know about UDL? Because we can skim right through this.
Even like a 1 to 5 or something.
Yeah.
Six, 4, 5. Okay. Yep. Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. So we have some upper elementary. Okay. Anyone lower elementary? 3, 4. Okay. All right. So Denise is 3, 4, grade 4, and I've no idea. Perfect. Yay. We love this. Yeah. You get to see it all. Yeah.
So am I able to skim here, Carla?
No. No.
Okay, good.
Well, I mean, like, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we're showing you two different things. So the UDL framework is based on 3 ideas: engagement, representation, and action and expression. When they changed the model around, they made engagement more, they put it at the very beginning. And the reason they did it is because recruiting interest, sustaining effort and persistence, and self-regulation, I think we do a really good job on representation, and we're doing a much better job on action and expression. I think the problem has been right here, the engagement piece. And the nice thing about UDL is it incorporates all kinds of learning theories are embedded inside of this, so that when you're using the framework, you're really getting access to a whole bunch of other frameworks as well, like multiple intelligence and Vygotsky's his language theories and developmental theories are all in here. And so, for example, recruiting interest, and we'll talk more about that later on, is really important. And how do you go out and sustain interest? And we were talking in my master's class last week, and we were saying how important interests are, that it was one of the areas that we really underplayed in when we were doing our work. But the reality is that if they're not interested, it's hard to do that. And when we're online, it makes it even more, because you're all entered. I can't tell if you're listening. I can't tell if you're following along. I have no idea. It's up to you. And so if I'm doing things that don't engage you, I've lost you. So this becomes probably more important online. Whereas if I'm in a classroom, because I can observe you, other kids have ways of engaging each other. We learned that there was a lot of secret curriculum going on between online and offline. That kids were, two of my kids have language difficulties, but it hardly shows up in the classroom because they use their visual tools. They're watching other kids, they're asking questions, they're following along. Skills that they could do in my classroom, they weren't able to do online. And we had to walk them back and walk them through it. So it just became that other layer that interfered. Representation is how am I going to share this back to you? And action expression is how you're going to tell me, basically. And we have another really good slide. I like this one. I wish I did this one. But access, digital media. So for example, everything that you make, if it's a website, a web page, whatever it is that you're doing, if you can make it digital, our students can access it. And so that is probably, online is really important. It's actually imperative. When we're in class, we have other ways to support, but as long as we can stay digital, you can always make changes to texts, and they're accessible. The moment we go paper and pencil, we've made them less accessible, and then we have to add multiple steps. So for example, inside of Google Drive, I can take a document, ask it to convert it to a Google Drive, and it will take that and make it into a text screen. But the problem is that it doesn't do perfect transcription. Just like here, you're not seeing perfect transcription. You have to build that workaround. There's another step. And every time we put a step in, we are creating an obstacle. One of the experts who designed the nudge movement said, we've spent so much time on the reward part, which is really important. Rewards are really important. But he said, if we spend more time on making it easier, people do it. So for example, Amazon, the reason they're set up the way they are, where they give you your, get you to sign in with your credentials, is because if I have to click, I stop. If I have to click and go in and go get my credit card, there's a 70% less likelihood that I will finish that transaction. Whereas if I have it, I go all the way and do it. And this is what's happening to our students. That one step can be the difference between them doing the work or not doing the work. And UDL doesn't promise us anything other than the ability to make things more accessible. Then we have to do our more work. Engagement is engaging with the material, the concepts, the idea. It's choice. Choice boards are really, really interesting. And I've seen it my whole career. Teachers have done this before we ever went online. One teacher had, I think, 60 ways to do the same project. It was just, here's the ways that you want to do it. And she emphasized, she'd give more points to the things that she thought match the curriculum more. But with that 60 ways, the kid on an IPP could still participate in class. So that can be really key here. And expression, like telling us how you know what it is that you know. So do you want to sing a song? Do you want to tell a story? There's a case where I got a kid engaged in my class by going to Old Town Road, and then we built a slideshow based on the Old Town Road song around mining in that Lace Bay story at Pit Pony. So perfect example of some of that. This slide is just, it's accessibility, it's differentiation, and it's motivation. Motivation is the one that we've fallen down on. I think we're getting much better at differentiating. I really do. And accessibility, I feel like teachers are getting there on that part as well. Part of it is that they've made it easier for us, right? We have good tools that allow us to do the accessibility part in a way that we couldn't have done it even 5 years ago. And there's things like tomorrow that are going to make it easier than today. Carla?
All right, so I'm not going to kind of go on ad nauseum on this one, but just, some compare and contrast between UDL and differentiated instruction. So the only part that I really want to speak to is just sort of that, I guess, the part that isn't in common between both of them. And so it's just, again, it's that motivation piece when we look at differentiated instruction. We can do all the UDL in the world and everything set up perfectly, but we need some way to pull them in. So it might be something that, okay, you've set up this beautiful lesson design on Olympic sports, what have you, but Tommy's not particularly interested in Olympic sports, really interested in card games because he plays cards every Friday with Grammy and Grampy. So maybe that's the hook for him. So it's having the UDL piece, and then it's sort of adding on that personalization or, differentiation in order to create that engagement.
It also could be your MTSS as that comes out, your tiers. So you do the assessment and everybody in the class is at a 3-digit addition, but that Tommy's only at 1-digit addition. That's right. So those are ways that we go out and try to make that change. There was a wonderful, in the it might have been 86, my very coming in, that would have been the first ones that I worked with in the 80s and 90s. No, it was 96. Their policy, and they said, our job every day is to invite students to come in and learn. And the thing is, we invited them to come and learn. However, we had nothing to feed them. There was only one meal on the table. And then we got to UDL and we put a smorgasbord on the table. Everything they could imagine was there. But the question we didn't ask was, are you hungry? Do you want to eat? And I think what we know now that we didn't know maybe at the beginning of my career was about mental health. Like, it was just rub that one off, like this is going to go away. And like a student that I give an hour every day to when we're in school, I would have never saw him. No one would have reached out past because he doesn't show up. Well, we're done. That's it. And now I spend an hour a day with him. And the thing is that this kid is very, very bright, but he also has all of these blocks that prevent him from learning. And so this, are you hungry? And the thing is, it's just like your mom. She finds a way to make you want to eat. This is the part that we need to be working on. And I know for a lot of us, it's frustrating because we go out and plan this perfect UDL lesson, and then you get there and nobody wants to do it, or it's not right. And I can tell you that the stuff that I'm presenting to you today, it took 5 and 6 different iterations before I got to something that I thought was good, and hopefully something that will be helpful for you.
Yeah, can we just scoot back up for just a second, Lockie? Or that's finally done that slide. But I was just thinking, like, we have an alternative program, and again, it's high school. It's not elementary, but when I look at it, these were kiddos that have been disengaged in learning for 10 plus years. And really the hook for them is the relationship that they have with those teachers. And, you know, a lot of times, again, and everyone kind of gets this, that it's not the content necessarily that you're going to hook them with, but it's like, well, you know what, I'm not doing the math because I hate math, but you know what, I'll do math because I really like you as a teacher. And, you know, that's been the big turnaround. And for my kiddos, this was the first graduating year for the alternative education class. And it was a beautiful thing to watch them walk across the stage, because 3 years ago, their odds of that happening were slim to nil. So it's a real testament to both UDL and relational approaches, that's for sure.
And that's one of the things I think you're going to see, Carla, is that the articles, all the articles that I read, and again, Vygotsky and a lot of the developmental people, the first thing we do is make it safe. Right? So this space has to be safe, so you can't move. So if we were to open in the fall and it was all online, you're going to, the time that you take to put your class together, to organize, to set the rules, the expectations, you still have to do all those things. And you have to add, how do I make a connection to individuals and they feel that I know them? We do have some things, strategies around that too. Synchronous and asynchronous. Most people did asynchronous in the province. So here's your homework. Here's the things. I might have thrown up a few videos and posted that up. And my classes worked synchronously, and I went at the same time every day because my kids are me. And if I had been shuffling them around, they would not have gotten there. So at 9 o'clock, I'd have people showing up at 20 to 10. But I would just say, here's what we do today, because I got 20 minutes. And the students weren't doing work outside of that hour. All of the kids that participated in my class were on an IPP for language arts or math. And some of them one or the other, and most of them both. And I was responsible to make sure that the kids who couldn't come for class had the same information as the kids who were showing up. So that was, that made a whole bunch of design choices in how we laid it out. So we have videos, and I'm just looking at the time. So I'm going to play the video, but mute it just so that we can talk a little bit about it and you can see it, but you're not going to be able to hear it. Unfortunately, I hear it, but that's fine. This open slide here, and if you look here at the slide deck, the reason it's set up this way is I have a Google Classroom, and it was too difficult for my kids to navigate. And it was too much work for them to get where I needed them to go. And then the next thing I started out with was a Google Doc. And the Google Doc worked perfectly fine, but it was too big. So when I sent it down to people, when this loads here, that first slide loads, so that immediately the kids who showed up with the classroom were they were ready to work right away. Whereas if I sent a Google Doc, the whole doc has to load before you can access it. So this became so much better. And then hyperlinks made things a whole lot easier. So everything on this page is hyperlinked. And so I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is the page. And so what we did was, by the end of it, they gave me 2 EAs. And so I had an EA that did math, and I had an EA that did language arts. And then I was there to either go in and teach with either of the EAs, or I was going to listen. And trust me, I had to teach my EAs how to use this because they don't use that technology. And unfortunately, they didn't start together. They started 2 weeks apart. So whenever you bring somebody else new in, it slows you down. It just can't help. But I also knew that I had 2 awesome EAs, and that, or EPAs, or what some other places call them, educational assistants. And they were great. And so what we did was we gave one the language arts and one the math, and then I would drop into the classrooms, or I might have a group that I was working with. And the programs, what we did was the programs we used was Jamboard, which we had never used before. We had these links here are to IXL, and the province doesn't recommend that for the whole for academic students, but IPP students were allowed to do that for them. And the thing that I learned from teaching in class was the first year I had 11 students that pretty much came down every day, and I had one EA, and it was, okay, I'm sending you off to IXL because this was management. I had enough computers to do that, but I didn't teach lessons. And it was helpful to the students to do the IXL because it closed off gaps that they had, things that they were approaching but didn't maybe completely understand. And it was at a slower pace, and I could see their results. And so I got some good out of it. But in teaching it the second year, I realized I need to teach direct lessons to support that. And then I need to be able to provide that lesson over and over again, because my kids don't get it. Just because I did it once meant I did it once. So by using videos, they were able to get that lesson 2 and 3 times, and at a speed and pace that they could get. So each of these things are, sorry, I'm going to go back here one. Each of these things on the screen are, each of those images are linked so that that would take you to the spot that you were going to. So with IXL, one of the things that they have is I can highlight the tasks that I want the students to do, and they're told to start at the lowest one and move down, so that they're always working on the just right task, or at least the below task. They shouldn't get a task that's over their head. So this kind of, they talk about having a soft opening. If something went wrong and I was trying to support students, I could send them off to some place that I knew they could work independently. And that was one of the big key walk-away learnings that I would tell you, is have some place you can send them off, because you can have technical problems. One of my EAs, the power went out. And so so I just took on her students, and she couldn't work that day. So you need to have these kind of soft places. Jamboard became a really exciting place, and I have links. I made my own money, and so we were able to do money exchanges. So that was really cool to be able to do money, and they could get one-on-one, and we saw some real big growth with the kids. But one of the things the kids told us was they liked being together and liked working on it. So when we created each of these individual rooms, it took time for the EAs to learn how to set up a room and to run it. But once they got it, it was easier for them, and it took time to teach the students to get into the rooms. But like here, if all 5 of us or 8 of us who are in this room right now started talking, it just doesn't work. And now we're going to talk about 2 different subjects. Not going to work. So I would always have my link in here so that they would just, it was one touch, and they would link in and they would go directly to Meets, and then they could type in that code, Classroom 5 RMS, and that would open up the room and they'd be there. Down here, Audible made some free books, and we did one called 0G, which is about pirates in space. Like, I don't know in middle school if I could have come up with a better book. It was free, and it played like a radio play, so we had multiple voices, although for the most part, it was one character with a robot. So it was only the 2 of them talking back and forth, so it didn't really get confusing. But at the end of it, my kid said, oh, there's another book. Can I read that one? And it just happened that the second book was also free on Audible. And he said the first time he ever read a book that he didn't have to read. So it was exciting. And then inside of here is, as old school as I could get, which was digital, except all I was asking them to do is tell me what happens at the end of each chapter. So I was working on comprehension. I was trying to work on skills and lay out my thinking, because we could go into it was free last year, and we took advantage of it. I could go into this program and work with them, but it allowed them to use their voice, to type, to print. Like, there were all kinds of things that they could do. So that action expression piece was taken care of. They could do pretty much anything you can imagine inside of there to share their understandings, and that made it really effective. This was this asynchronous part. So the kids would have, again, the links are up there. Read Theory is one of my favorites. All my kids can do it, and they use their assistive technology to do that one. So I'm working on listening comprehension, and as they answer the questions, Read Theory adjusts for them. And so up or down, depending on how they answered the questions. And the AT means that they can listen to it. So I'm working on their listening comprehension. That was a place I could send them anytime I needed to if something else wasn't working, and they could get something productive done. And this would be, here's what the assignment is. And again, from that top front page, you went to the next page down, and then there was a set of links like a bookmark, and that just took you to exactly the spot that they needed to go, because my kids get overwhelmed if they see too much. So a slide is just about a perfect chunk, and the things that they needed to see would be chunked down, chunked down, chunked down. And if I wasn't getting it, then I made a phone call. You definitely need lots of reminders for this stuff. And I would make my videos, and we'll show you a little bit how we did it, but the videos were 2 minutes long. And I did one for language arts and one for math, so that the kids who only needed the language arts didn't hear any of the math, and the kids who only needed English only heard that. So it just kind of kept that to be easier. I also put them in Symbaloo, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with Symbaloo, but basically it looks like this one here where I'm pointing to the math, and it's a visual bookmark system. And it can be really good in lower elementary. And you're able even to link your Google Classroom. So my Google Classroom was linked in there. My slides were linked in there, everything. So you didn't have to use that. Unfortunately, because my kids weren't used to using it, they didn't use it. And the same thing with Google Classroom. What happened was, if Google had a few of Moodle's systems where I could hide things, it was great, but the more I added, the more confused they got. And so ultimately it kept pushing me back to that Google Slides, and that seemed to be working the best, because I got the advantage of, here's what you need to know, and I got the advantage of, it loads quick. So even though there were more information that would load at the end, if you only needed that front page to navigate around to the things you had to do, it really worked well. This is just walking you literally through as easy as I could make it with the links. Here's how you do it. That is a hyperlink. So if you were to click on that, it would actually take you to where you put that information in. So as easy as we can do it. This was me creating a question. And actually, when I showed Carla, I added the chart because I wanted to provide support. And now I looked at it and I said, I probably should take the chart out and put a link in. So this is part of the process, right? You do something, you realize, hey, I thought that was going to work. It didn't. And you change it up. So right now, what I would do is this hundreds chart that I have here, I would put a link to it. If you're having trouble, here's support, right? Because my kids aren't going to go look for it. And then basically, this one here has all 5 questions that I want them to do. These 2 videos are the answers for A and B. And then I can evaluate the ones they get with the other 3 that I didn't give them answers for. And if they have trouble, then I could do one-on-one support. So this is kind of creating an independent task. It works for both in class or out of class students, because if I'm in class, sometimes I don't have time. I've got 11 students or 7 students. If somebody is not succeeding, I need to be able to provide them something else. These are awesome. This is from this book here called Toy Theater. And for your IPP kids, time and leveled layered supports. And if you look right over here, the IXL link for time. So we could teach our lesson online, because there's the supports, and the teacher and the students would share their screen back to the EA or back to me. And then when they finished and we thought they had it, then they hit the link and they could go do the practice on IXL and get immediate feedback. And there's strong correlation to this immediate feedback and kids doing well. So trying to find these tools that give students feedback. Now, Carla and I talked about when we got the presentation running, there are some people that don't need immediate feedback. We get that. Jamboard is one we used. And if you are familiar with Jamboard, there are workshops. If you're not, there are workshops going on. But I have a link in here where I created money so that you can just put the money in there and do that, which is for kids on IPPs, one of the big goals that we normally have in 5, 6, and 7, it can range from identifying it to adding it and subtracting it. And if I get to multiplication, they probably don't need to be with me. This one here is the same thing. So what we did was, this is a slide, and this links you to every place I want you to go, and there's your work at the end. So it was just kind of serving everything up as quickly or as best as we could. Here's another one for math, and I try to set it up developmentally. So this is the easiest thing to do for place value. This is the hardest thing to do for place value. So I recommended them starting, and they'd use this process to go through, and that is a link for them to make the same place value with the charts. So virtual manipulatives online are really good, but it's also good in the classroom because they're only with me for an hour a day. They're in their regular class learning math. Well, if I say pull out the manipulatives in grade 6 and nobody else is doing that, they're not going to do it. So having them virtually, if everybody has their computer, and some classes have, every student has one, or teachers use them as centers, my kids are more likely to do it. And this one is just fractions. I didn't even do that with them this year, but I just thought I'd build it out and share it with you. And these are all available to you. And this is the linked page, right? So there's the ELA. This takes you to the writing project. This is the brain pop that I had assigned for the ELA kids. It would take them right to their work. There were other links that I wanted them to go to, and we played games on Friday with Quizzy and Quizlet, and they're really good tools for kids who need to overlearn. And my kids got really excited about it. So Fridays became my evaluation time because I was evaluating the things that I was teaching. So if I had practiced money, then money would be one of my games that they would play. And their responses at least gave me an idea. Well, are they getting it? Are they not getting it? So I would get some feedback, or it would be make 10 strategy that we were teaching as well. And I could get feedback on that. Here was a great thing that Carla found. Carla, is there anything you want to talk about that in there?
I think you were actually the evil genius behind that one.
Yeah, we found some sites where they made postings, and we thought, well, this would be really good for people to go back and look at because they're quick and easy to look at, quick reminders. And just the thing that I learned about was being in class 10 minutes before was really important. I totally agreed with that one. And I'm not a planner normally. And all of the planning skills that I ever had came out in these. There's no way. So the anchors away is I really felt that having anchor activities that I could push people through, and I know teachers use it like I'm calling anchors away, but teachers will have their tasks that they set up at the beginning of class. If there's a problem and you're sorting out a fight, everybody can go do their multiplication charts, or everybody can, at the end, you have the all done box in their desk where they can pull out something that's working on a skill that isn't mastered, but it's independent. And so we have these kinds of things were good examples of things like that, that if there was something that I just had to deal with and I didn't have a choice, I wasn't losing a whole class with the kids doing nothing while I dealt with one person's problem. One of the things that became this is the one you found. One of the things that we both feel are really important is executive functioning skills. And what we saw was it's diminished because of cognitive supports. And part of the problem with cognitive supports is that they get another layer that interferes with the learning. So if you're just doing math and you're answering that, that's great. But then you throw answering the questions by reading, well, that adds another layer. And then you go in and throw a computer, that adds another layer. And then you go in and whatever's going on at home, that adds another layer. And so we found that if the kids couldn't do something, if we didn't teach them before, they couldn't do it on their own when they got home. And so it limited some of the choices that we were able to make. The only new software that I taught was the Jamboard. And I had to take a whole class off and do nothing else. We did win, lose, or draw on the Jamboard. so that everybody got a chance to play with it and use it and feel comfortable with it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. Carla?
Sure. Yeah, it was interesting looking at the executive functioning too, like with our alt ed kiddos. And literally our teachers in that program were having one-on-one phone calls daily, walking them through it because of that executive functioning piece. They'd normally be able to provide that in class, but certainly online provided a whole new kettle of fish. Brain-based is definitely, it's all UDL. And, we're talking about emotions, the gatekeeper to learning. It's all about, that relationship piece. Do they feel safe in your class? Or in this case, were they feeling safe online? And I think the UDL piece that Lockie was providing, making all of those connections so that if I'm there as a learner, I don't feel like I'm out on my own and I can't figure out how to get back to where I'm supposed to be. It's still creating that feeling of safety and success. And again, with the UDL, intelligence is a function of experience. So, where we are, we're a rural area. A lot of our kids have experience with farming and agriculture and mechanical pieces. And any times our teachers can relate it back to those sorts of things, we definitely see them shine. And again, the brain stores what learners find most meaningful. And that goes for all of us for sure. What we're interested in, what we can make meaning of, is where what's going to be remembered for sure.
And that's the thing, right? So one of the things that I had at the beginning of everything was I did a check-in. So the first place, routine really helps with development of these lessons. So the first thing they all had to do was log into my Google Classroom, and they had to answer a question every morning. And I can share that if people are interested. And basically, I did zones of regulation because my kiddos were really familiar with that. And I had the last one listed on there is I need to speak to a counselor. And it would all be done in private with me. So they answer that question. I also in there had it linked to my slideshow and linked to whatever else they needed to do. Make it easy as possible. That was the whole idea of this. I have a video I showed in class with the Egyptians, and they're moving the blocks up, and someone's putting water on it so that they can move because they didn't have the wheels to get it up there. We're the water. Like if we don't lay it down and make it easy, they don't do it.
Yeah, and this one just talking about like the feedback too. So any of those pieces, that immediate feedback, the specific feedback definitely maximizes the uncertainty. And then just sort of back to this, like, our brains are really busy, the amount of information that we're processing and not even aware of, and what, our brains are deciding that we're actually going to attend to. So our brains definitely acting more like a sieve than maybe the sponge theory that we thought. And, in spite of all these 40,000 bits of information, we can only pay conscious attention to one piece at a time. So, we really need to know our learners and who they are as people and what they're interested in and what motivates them in order to be able to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to, encourage them to attend to this bit of information that I'm providing? And novelty is definitely the key for this one. So how do we get the attention? Do I need it to survive? Is there some sort of emotional connection? And novelty. And I think one of the areas, Lockie shines in many areas, but one of the areas certainly is novelty, and gamification. And how do I make it new and interesting? Because the brain loves that. When it gets to be the same thing over and over and over again, we just tune it out, right?
Except that we want to do the same. We want to do the same thing. So
right.
one of the things is we want to do the same thing, but we need novelty to make it go. So how do you create sameness within? So one of the things I noticed that Barb is in here, Barb's Welford, and Barb was talking on one that I sat and listened to. And for example, when we talk about Book Creator or Flipgrid, they allow us to get them to use the same tool and understand how to use that tool, but how I want them to use the tool can look completely different anytime I use it. So for me, and Barb added a new word for me, and if I say it wrong, Barb, you can correct me, because I was struggling with AT again, because to me, these were like, the only thing that's difference between Bob using it and Sam using it is Bob has a disability and Sam doesn't, right? So if Sam goes and records it with his voice, well, then that's just Sam. If Bob does it, well, then it's assistive technology. And she talked about how easy access, right? So we're talking about access. And a lot of these new tools make it slippery. The access, you don't have to plan to put the voice there. The voice is just there. You don't have to plan to put the reader in there. The reader's just there. And it's really, really important that we're picking good tools that you don't have to think about it. So now when you go get that list of accommodations, you go, oh, okay, as long as we use these tools, all of that's there. And then we differentiate for the pieces that don't work. And then that becomes still work, but it's a lot easier to do than try to build everything in front. And so this slide is just the tools we love. Yeah. We would not live without them. And I know Seesaw would be one in lower elementary that they would throw in here. I'm doing some professional development on that this year because I don't know a whole lot of it, but these were the key. And we are going to give you time to go in and do this. One was links with slides. Being able to link slides together was a huge tool for executive functioning. And slides have all kinds of really neat features. So I highly recommend you doing a slides workshop because there's all kinds of things in there. I like Google Classroom. It just wasn't, it was too much for my students. So that slides thing made things easier. Book Creator, that's Keep. Keep is one place to put all your passwords. We know it doesn't meet digital citizenship requirement, but my kids, at least, they're protected by their login for their GNAS-PES. And when they went in there, we could put all of their specialty passwords and usernames and even a link so that when they went inside their Keep, it just took them right to where they needed to go. So these are some of the things that really matter in making this effective, is having those kinds of things that make it easy for students to get to. Book Creator and Flipgrid were two others, and Screencastify. So we'll have time to show maybe a little bit of some of the stuff that we were playing with. This one comes right out of a rewards reading that's recommended by Florida. And so this was done in class as a tier 3 support, but delivered as a tier 1 in MTSS. Hard to understand, but basically this list here is what the student would be expected to read. So we started out with everybody had to read in 2 minutes this list, and you could do it any way you wanted. But if you read this list, there couldn't be any breaks. So this young lady shows us what 15 seconds in that list looks like. So I don't know if you're gonna, well, we'll see if you hear it or not. I'm guessing I'm gonna have to link out here, but no, can't hear it.
No, can't hear it. No.
So she reads every one of those on the list in 15 seconds. And the reward was you got to come to Mr. McKinnon's class where I have an Xbox 360 and all the stuff I bought. The school didn't buy any of that stuff. I used to be a gamer and I still pretend to be one, but not very often anymore. So they get to come down to my class. So the students who could do it in 15 seconds got to come down, but they picked a friend from the class. And then I randomly picked somebody. So if you could only do it in 2 minutes, you still had a chance to come down and do it so that I wasn't taking away the response. And then they picked their challenge. So 15 seconds was the top, but I also had 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then they picked their challenge 1 minute to see how quickly they could do it. That activity was motivating for the grade 7s who weren't motivated to do anything. But it was because what I was asking them to do is reading lists of words is not that exciting. But when I could gamify it, and then I used the technology, and then I set it so that they couldn't see each other's performances, they were asking me to post them up so that they could see what each other's did. And if they gave them permission to post them, I posted them. It was just another way of trying to get them to move on.
My favorite was she did it in the bathroom. I was like, Lockie, is she in the bathroom?
I said, yes, she's in the bathroom. Okay.
She's into
this is really important. So I will click this open and I'll stop presenting and present. this was something I got like 10 years ago and never got a chance to use, and it was reading songs. So the students, and I put the link in there for that, so you don't have to find the songs if you decide to do this. All the songs are linked with Google Docs, so you can give them to your kids. This would have worked at home. I did it in person with the kids. And so what they did was they got a song that they could read. So we told them to
pick their favorite song or something they're interested in. Yeah.
Exactly. And cancel. And so they had 40 songs to present from. Now, the added kicker, the gamification piece was, we went to a store and there was a CD that you could play American Idol on. And so if they practiced their songs, they could beat each other for the highest score based on the songs that we did. And the thing about the songs was that a lot of the words repeated. So my kids are not used to reading long passages, so they don't always have, even though they're readers, they don't have the stamina to read. So I'm going to share this now and you'll get to hear him go if it doesn't disappear on me. Okay, it's always, this is, unfortunately, this is the good part. It just,
I think that's just me, Lucky.
yeah. And I presented it and it grabbed another YouTube video that was up and not the one I wanted. Okay, I apologize. You're gonna have to watch it in the links. But basically what happens in here was that he reads it and we put on the text below the closed captioning. And now everything that he's reading is showing up on the closed captioning to see that he got it right or wrong. So it's another motivating thing that we were able to do. Now, the immersive reader that's built inside of, actually now it's in Flipgrid and it's in Book Creator. Book Creator is going to add it in the fall. And you're going to be able to go in there and do some really cool things with this immersive reader. And I'm going to try one more time to click on it and play, and we'll post it up here. And I'm going to try that. Okay, here we go. Chrome tab. Okay, so let's hope. There we go. This is going to work. That gives me closed captions, and then those captions read right over here. Now, if I click on the cog for settings, I can access something called Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is going to read these passages, and I have a whole bunch of features that I can fiddle with to make it more accessible and provide more supports. So, for example, I can do text preferencing and size of font, and I'm going to turn this down so we can read it all together, because that tends to increase fluency unless a student is having trouble reading word by word. I can increase spacing or turn it off, and I just turn it off. Comic Sans, but I'm going to go back to, I can't pronounce that name. I have grammar options, so I can get it to find nouns. I might change that to the red. And then turn on with verbs. And I can also turn on syllabication. So it syllabicates the words, which is good when you're trying to teach the kids to sound the words out. And then the last thing I can do, I can have it focus so that it only focuses on one line as it reads. I can change that to be more, or I can change it to be the whole paragraph and just have everything else shut out so that students aren't distracted. I'm going to put it to 3 lines. I can add a picture dictionary. And then the other thing I'm able to do, which can be very helpful in our diverse classrooms, are I can add another language. So I can give the direction in 2 languages if that's what I need to do. Again, with any translation program, you just have to understand that it's not going to be perfect. But if you have, and in the real world, I wouldn't turn everything on here like that. Don't let perfect get in the way of good. So close that off, and we can play the reading text here.
Salut les gars, je veux que vous lisiez votre chanson, j'ai mis 2 minutes et 30 secondes. Il ne finira pas le passage de tout le monde. Mais je veux que tu lises jusqu'à ce que la vidéo s'arrête.
So if I pause that and then go back to the original, I can also have it read.
Hi guys, I want you to read your song. I put 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It will.
If I click on the word, now I get a picture. I can find out what the word says.
Chanson.
Chanson is song.
Song.
And so I have all kinds of extra. So we're gonna apologize to you guys. We took a lot of your time, so we're gonna give you some time for questions, or if you want to explore something and something else. So do you want to see if there's any questions in there, Carla, and we'll do what we can.
Sure, I don't see anything in the chat box or anything like that. Yeah, I'll try and share the slideshow with you as well, because there's a really neat, the book creator, that was a neat project that you had done as well, Lockie, with one of your kiddos, with lots of, sort of embedded pieces in there. I don't know if you can pull that up or not, but.
I can pull it up in a second. The thing is, with a lot of this stuff, the book creator, what was really neat was a lot of this was done in the classroom with our students. So, for example, this was the year end. At the year end, I asked the students to evaluate me, help me make the program better. And because a lot of my kids have trouble with literacy, Flipgrid is a really good place. And I promised not to read their stuff, that I would send it to the EAs and that they would be able to get that information out. But it's also good for Who Am I? Strengths, challenges, and interests at the beginning of the year, so that we're able to add student voice to our work. And again, I did this, when I do this, I do it with every kid in the class. So I might only have to do adaptations for some kids, but we word it things like, what's something you're really good at? What's something you'd like to work on this year to get better at? And what are you interested in? So that way I'm getting a lot more richer material, and the students are able to give me some input. My wife uses it for who do you like to work with, and who do you think needs a friend? So and again, those don't go posted back. You have a way of inside the program. And so I highly recommend, if you're interested in Flipgrid or a book creator, to go to sessions. You can control who gets to access what in Flipgrid. So I can either make it so that everybody can comment on it and see it, or I can make it so that only I'm the only one that gets it. So even private readings, so kids can take a 2-minute passage and read it to you from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. You're able to show that to your students, which is really neat. And provides a lot of growth opportunity. This one here is all the UDL that you can do inside a book creator. It's amazing.
Lockie, can you pop the screen back up? We just can't see the slideshow.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Right. No, it's okay.
This one here on differentiated learning, it can't share your screen. Is it okay? I apologize. I'm going to stop and then I'm going to present now. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
No. Okay, here we go. We should have it now.
I feel like I'm on Chevy Chase and he's trying to turn the Christmas lights on. Ta-da!
Yeah. There you go. This one here is a book they made. This one is using a book creator in the elementary classroom. Highly recommend it. When you sign up for Book Creator, they're available under teacher resources. This is excellent. And they have videos and all kinds of stuff to walk through. So if this is the kind of professional development you like, that has a lot of supports. And then there's a community so that if there's something you don't understand, you go to the community to ask for support. It is very helpful. This book here is, I'm going to play the video, but you're not going to be able to hear anything. This one I did with my student who has very serious mental health issues, and he can't enter school. The anxiety level is so high. And so he doesn't have a whole lot of motivation to learn because he's a really bright kid. So we came up with, his father showed me something called One Idea, 5 Levels. So you explain it at 5 different levels. So the first level would be like to a kid that's 5 years old, and the last level would be an expert. I kind of think it, if you're familiar with genius hours, I kind of think of it as a lower level genius hour where you're not having to explain a whole lot in it. But this is his high interest. And when we would work on it together, and so this was shared work, so make it easy. Even though he loves Nintendo, even though he's very interested in this, he wouldn't do it by himself. So we shared the task together. And for example, that's my voice there saying, you know, you can find the bus from Nintendo. It's just down the way, or get your car fixed. If you look at it, he found the video. You can play video inside of it. We wrote it. We put audio recordings in it. And he actually actively engaged in doing this. But it was from a shared point, and he's one-on-one with me for either an hour or half an hour. Through COVID, it was a half hour. And just trying to get him back to school and trying to get him to do some work. And this was the ticket, right? So it was in that area of motivation that we had to use the UDL piece. And the technology, really all the technology does in here is support it. And this guy could rhyme off every version of this program. So he did level 1, explaining to a person that knows nothing. His grandmother was the person he thought of, and then explaining to a friend about it. So it gave him some really neat ideas on how to use it, and got him motivated to work. Like, he actually stayed longer in class. And then the last thing is Screencastified. This was Carla's baby.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it was, but no, it was a really, really helpful tool, especially at the high school level, because there were even some applets like that. For instance, our chemistry teachers or mathematics teachers could share, and they could actually have the applet playing in the back, and they could speak over top of it. And it made for success for a lot of our teachers. Whoops, there's our timer. Just because they could record the lesson exactly as they wanted it. So they knew when they were posting it that it's like, okay, I know I have this part the way I wanted it. And I know, a few years back, we did a PLC with some teachers on some flipped classrooms. And this tool was also an excellent tool. And now, yeah, that's my, I think that's on course selections.
Oh, there you go. That was really important one, Carla.
I know, it was super important. But anyway, I paid for the premium version because you're only allowed to record up to 5 minutes, which is plenty long anyway. But there was just a few things I was coming out at 5 minutes and 10 seconds every time. And it was getting frustrating. And I think the big thing with any of these tools, Screencastify, is, again, I know Lockie has said it a number of times, is just don't strive for perfection. Like, you know, the first time, yeah, you're going to probably do like 10 outtakes on it. And then after a while, you're going to realize, hey, you know what, like it's good enough. And this was just an example of an applet for chemistry, just so I could show some of those teachers how they could incorporate what's on their screen, and just make some quick videos for teachers that are helpful for online learning, but really helpful at any point in time, especially if you're a flipped classroom.
Anyway, thank you. And I'm sorry. Part of this is you have to accept that it's not going to work. Once you kind of give in to that, you can kind of deal and do. And Screencastify, one of the things that two of my EAs said to me was, my kids, one of the things we said is kids are going to have to be taught how to watch video. My kids didn't watch the videos I created. My EAs did, but my EAs pointed out that they had two children that were older, and they said everything for their kids was text-based that was online. And they were amazed at the videos because the videos sped the learning process up, again, making it slippery, and they needed access to that. So anyway, thank you for coming and spending an hour with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Sorry we're over time. Yeah. You're very welcome, Stephanie.
And if there's anything, you have any questions, please feel free to email us. And for me, you might get a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a 4-text rule.